Texas will again lift its head among the nations. It ought to do so, for no country upon the globe can compare to its natural advantages. One of my favorite passions is Texas history. I am a history freak when it comes to Texas. See, I'm a history nerd because I feel that it's important to know where we've come from and where we're going. My passion for Texas history began when I was just a little 7th grader. I had a crazy history teacher who thought we needed to research every single topic about Texas history. And the more I did it, the more I began to learn that I actually like Texas history. And that's where it all started. You see, she would make us do these interactive notebooks, and we would have to write stuff down and research that and do this and do that. And that's where my passion for Texas history began. Point 1, Texas history is fun to learn about. Point 2, Texas history teaches stuff that the history books don't. And point 3, Texas history is interesting to learn. Now let's take a look back at point 1. Texas history is fun to learn about. You see, it's the more stuff you learn about, the more interesting it becomes. First, take the French immigrants, the first settlers in Texas. They came to Texas on a quest. They came to see if what they had heard from the Mexican government was true, that there was gold hid out among Texas. Now, as we all know, those are just fables. But when they came, they began a great turmoil for Texas. You see, many great things happened when the French showed up. They had an explorer named Cabeza de Vaca who did the first open heart surgery in Texas on a wild Indian who later would help him. Another thing that's interesting is the American settlers. They left their home country of America for 2 different reasons. One reason was most of them felt they needed more land and more area for them and their families. The other more astounding reason is they left America to come help fight for Texas against the Mexican government, and they would eventually help Texas win the war to become their own nation. It's also interesting in Texas history because you have the starting of a nation. You have a piece of land that has gone through 6 different countries and then decides it wants to become its own nation. So the Texans, being the people they are, gathered up everyone they needed and they began to fight. They fought many different battles. To help win Texas history and make Texas the nation it is to get today. And they eventually fought to make Texas its own state. Now, point 2, Texas history teaches you things you never knew. There are many, many dark and gloomy secrets in Texas history that the history books, for some reason, just won't teach you. My first example is about Germany and the German settlers into Texas. Now, the Germans came to Texas around the same time everybody else did. However, if you read just your regular old school textbook, you'll see that the Germans have nothing in there. And I find this very interesting because they helped create one of the best societies in Texas in their own little niche in Kerrville and Fredericksburg in the hill country where most of the Germans are. Now, I don't know that if it's because the history books just don't find this aspect important or if they just didn't have time to put in there. But to me, this is one of the more better secrets to Texas history that for some reason isn't in the textbooks. Now, another one is the first early settlers in Texas. They were here, now when I'm saying early settlers, I mean the ones that were here way before Texas became Texas, when it was still just a piece of property. Now, they came because they were running away, and most of them were outlaws. However, they came to Texas and started a new life. So, therefore, I find that interesting. The more you research it, the better it becomes. The other thing I find interesting is the first responders in Texas and the first cowboys. Now, when I say first responders, most of you probably think people like firemen, policemen, and a person on an ambulance. However, the first responders I'm talking about came to Texas to help fight the Texans. They came because they felt that the Texans needed to get away from the Mexican government, and they helped come and do that for them. Another one, when I say first cowboys that most history books don't know, are that the first cowboys in Texas were black, and they helped shape the rangeland we know today as how we know it. They were out there cowboying before most new Americans and other people from other countries were. They were here with the Indians and they were helping us become the state we are today. Point 3. Texas history is interesting to me, as it should be to you. There are many different aspects to Texas history that I find interesting. Plus the ones mentioned earlier in the speech, some other important ones I find that it's important to know about the beginning of Texas. Because Texas, at one time, like I said earlier, had been its country 7 times 4. And I just find the early parts of Texas history interesting because it shows you a lot of the hard struggles that the people that have been in the state before us went through to get to where we are today. Now, another one was the early government problems in Texas. Now, when you look at these things, most of you think government, not interesting, right? Get out. But the first government stuff in Texas was very interesting because, you see, we had people come to Texas that started this nation and then realized they weren't politicians and didn't understand how any of the stuff needed to work. But once they figured it out, they made Texas into one of the best nations before it became a state. And they still helped shape the state into the best one in the state. Now, when we sum all this up, if you haven't figured out already, I think Texas history is amazing. I feel, like I said, that it's important to know where we've been and where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I find it very interesting about the things that are just happening in everyday Texas now that future generations will look back and see and think, wow, how did they do this? Thank you.
Thank you.